Lindsey, what's in your lens today?
Yeah, let's talk about it. So on Friday, President Trump posted a blatantly racist video clip portraying former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama as apes. The clip set to Lion King Sleeps Tonight, the song, was spliced into a longer video promoting conspiracy theories about the 2020 election after widespread backlash. The post was deleted. But even then, the president insisted he had nothing to apologize for. This was not an isolated misstep. It was the latest in a pattern. The depictions of Black people as apes is not random internet trolling. It's a racist trope that dates back centuries, used by slave traders and segregationists to dehumanize Black people and justify violence, including lynchings. That history matters. When imagery like this is amplified from the highest office in the country, it's a problem. For years, President Trump has seemed immune to the usual rules of politics. Criticism comes, he doubles down, and the cycle moves on. But this time was different. The White House initially dismissed the backlash as, quote, fake outrage. Then members of his own party spoke up. Senator Tim Scott, the sole Black Republican in the Senate and one of the president's allies, called the clip, quote, the most racist thing I've seen out of this White House. Representative Mike Lawler said the president's post, quote, is wrong and incredibly offensive. Representative Michael Turner called the, quote, racist images, quote, offensive, heartbreaking, and unacceptable. Senator Roger Wicker said the president, quote, should take it down and apologize. By midday, the post was down. By evening, the president said he did not realize the clip had been spliced into the video. When asked if he condemned the racist depiction, he said, of course I do, but he declined to apologize, saying it wasn't his mistake. Here's why context matters. This is the same man who was first written about in the New York Times in the 1970s because the Justice Department sued his company for racial discrimination. The same man whose Trump Plaza Hotel and Casino paid a $200,000 fine for transferring Black and women dealers off tables to satisfy gamblers' prejudices. The same man who in 2011 helped push the false claim that President Obama was not born in the United States. The same man who launched his 2015 campaign by calling Mexican immigrants, quote, rapists, and continues to label migrants as criminals. Any one of these incidents on its own might be dismissed as careless language or political provocation, but together, they tell a story. At minimum, they show a willingness to lean into racial resentment when it serves a purpose. So this moment isn't just about one offensive post. It's about whether there are still boundaries and whether accountability still exists, even for a president who often tests both. He deleted the video, his party pushed back, but without an apology, without the ownership, the question remains, is this really a break from the pattern? Because history doesn't disappear just because a post does.
The video was disgusting, but I think it is important to be clear about how it was posted. It was someone else did like a screen grab recording of, a auto-scrolling reels or videos on social media, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. It's probably Facebook. It's probably a boomer who did it. And it was the election-related video that was of interest to Trump. The next video, like the one it automatically progressed to, is this video that makes fun of not just the Obamas, as you noted, all these Democrats are portrayed as different animals, and is making fun of them. I think it's kind of uncanny valley and bizarre and disturbing looking, the images, frankly. I don't love this. That's the next video. And they recorded too much of it. So they got a brief part of that video, which showed the Obamas like that. And so Trump didn't share it to share the part with the Obamas, right? He was sharing the election part. Now, that was his bad, or whoever did it, and it was bad. But when you're looking at me like that, he didn't mean to share that part of it, right? That was a different video.
I didn't mean, I don't accept that. Like, you control your social media, or you always have an excuse about why somebody did something. Even when he offends, I think he put himself in inappropriate clothing and offended like the whole Catholic Church a while ago. He still said, "Oh, that was some young staffer."
As a
like,
Catholic,
all right,
I was not really offended.
Okay, but other people were, Robbie. It's just like he's always blaming somebody else and saying, "Oh, it's just an AI image." It's not just. You're offending whole communities of people, maybe not Robbie, maybe not every single black person, right? Some people I did see talking nonsense saying that they weren't that offended. Okay, but people who work next to you.
I agree that it's the image, it is offensive, but it's not.
You can't always say,
not the part of the video he was trying to share.
But you can't always say, oh, I don't know. I didn't know. Oh, that was somebody else. Like, just apologize, right? Don't you think it would be presidential to say, you know what, I maybe didn't see that, but I also do apologize for anybody that I offended. Because I understand
the history. He took it down and said it was offensive, it seems.
No, he took it down and said, of course I wouldn't post something offensive. Like, no, you did post something offensive. You need to apologize for doing that. You're the president. What do you mean? The same way that other people are called to apologize when they're offending whole communities of people, you can easily say, even if you don't say the Catholic Church imagery didn't offend you, fine. Most black people said, okay, well, we understand racism in this country, the use of that type of imagery, why that would be completely disrespectful.
Right,
why can't he just say, I apologize?
I feel like that was acknowledged, that it was wrong to have posted it. It was an accident, and it was taken down. I feel like that is.
And he doesn't need to say, I apologize.
I don't know that he needs to say those words because he didn't do it, but he took it down.
He did do it. It's shared from his account on Truth Social. It's shared from his own account.
Well, he said somebody else put it up.
Okay, so does the staffer fired then? What's the repercussion?
They should fire.
Like, what's the repercussion? That's what I like. So say something, do something.
Well, they should fire the person not for watching the entire video that they posted, and that they would have seen that part of it.
Right, because it's embarrassing, especially if you're the social media director. Let's say if that's a position that posts for big people. But since he's not naming the person, and since the time, what was it, like 11 o'clock at night? I think it was President himself, because he sits on social media. I mean, he sat on social media to discuss Bad Bunny, which we will bring up later in the show. So he has time, and I don't believe that it wasn't him. I don't care. I know I'm calling everybody a liar today. I don't believe it. I think it was you, and I think you should apologize. That's the right thing to do. And sometimes being presidential is not a bad thing, especially if something went wrong and you totally didn't mean it. If it was actually a mistake, or are you actually just saying that you're racist and so you won't apologize? Like, what is it? Just say it was a mistake and I apologize, because you've now offended an entire community. He should well understand why that would be so deeply offensive.
All right. If he additionally said the word sorry, that would be nice, but it is addressed to my satisfaction by acknowledging that it was wrongful and taking it down and denying.
And there's a whole other layer of like the social media, and we talk about this often, the childishness of the social media antics coming from the administration as a whole. We talked about the DHS and the constant use of songs and artists saying, please don't use my music. We talked about using cartoons from Canada, like the turtle cartoon. And it's like, hey, we don't want to be depicted in this way, arresting migrants. So the administration has a problem with being extremely childish and immature on social media and not taking accountability for the things that they're doing, even when people who are technically supporting them in certain ways, like Theo Vaughn is saying, stop using my likeness in inappropriate ways. So the administration is having trouble with social media and being presidential or being any type of leadership in that way. I
agree with some of those claims, and I disagree with, you can use, I'm not an absolute believer in copyright protections. You can use Franklin in the creative ways they are doing.
Franklin is his name. Yes, Franklin.
It's kind of funny. That's the turtle.
Yes, the turtle.
Some of those are kind of amusing. Other things have gone a little bit far, and you can't use music from people without their permission, obviously, and other things. But I just don't think this is an example, really, of their social media is broken because it was just, they didn't mean to share that part, which is good, because they shouldn't have.
You're just taking Trump's word for it, huh?
Well, it's not. You can see from the recording that it was not supposed to. It flips to that at the end of it.
When you share things, do you generally read them through or watch them through, or no? You just kind of watch the first 10 seconds and then share. How do you do social media?
When I share for in DMs for
when you share publicly.
Chats,
when you share publicly.
I share kind of incautiously under those circumstances, but publicly, no.
Yeah. I hope the president.
Although you don't always know. Sometimes I'll share an observation from someone on Twitter. You'll quote tweet it, and then somebody will be like, "Oh my God, who are you quoting?" You'll look, and it's some unsavory person, but you didn't know because the point they made was perfectly valid. All right, Lindsay, what's in your lens?
Let's discuss. So President Trump has repeatedly described this immigration crackdown as a mission to remove the, quote, worst of the worst, meaning murderers, rapists, gang members. But according to an internal Department of Homeland Security document obtained by CBS News, the data tells a far more complicated story. So ICE made roughly 393,000 arrests between January 21st, 2025, and the end of January this year, 2026. That's more than triple the number of administrative arrests in fiscal year 2024. So yes, enforcement has ramped up dramatically. But here's the part that stood out to me. Less than 14% of those arrested had charges or convictions for violent crimes like homicide, robbery, sexual assault, kidnapping, or arson. Take a listen to a bit of the reporting.
The president, for example, often talks about ICE going after murderers, gangsters, and sexual offenders and rapists, but only 2% of the people arrested by ICE had been convicted or charged with homicide or sexual assault, and another 2% were identified as gang members. The numbers really illustrate, guys, that the Trump administration's mass deportation policy is also impacting a lot of people who, yes, may be in the country without legal permission, but are not any threat to the public or to national security.
Now, nearly 40% of those arrested had no criminal record at all. They were accused only of civil immigration violations, things like overstaying a visa or living in the country without authorization. Those are civil offenses, typically handled in immigration court, not criminal court. When the administration frames this operation primarily as a sweep of violent predators, the public deserves clarity about who is actually being arrested. Public opinion appears to be shifting also. A CBS News poll found support for President Trump's deportation efforts has dropped from 59% at the start of his second term to 46%. More than 60% of Americans surveyed said immigration agents are being, quote, too tough. That shift may reflect what people are seeing: workplace raids, day laborers targeted in parking lots, even U.S. citizens stopped and questioned. This isn't a debate about whether immigration law should be enforced. It's a debate about transparency and proportionality. If nearly 40% of those arrested have no criminal record and only a small fraction are accused of the violent crimes that dominate political speeches, then we have to ask ourselves whether the policy matches the promise. And if we're going to have a national conversation about immigration enforcement, it needs to start with who is actually being swept up, not just who we're told is.
If 40% don't have a criminal record, doesn't that mean 60% do have a criminal?
Well, the other ones in the report, and I urge you to watch it, would show that, yeah, like some people, they had a traffic violation. Like I'm sure you have, Robbie, if you drive your little scooter on the sidewalk, that's illegal. I don't know if you do, and it's not little, it's a big scooter, whatever. But my point is, these are small traffic violations, and then we're hearing people argue, they violated the law. That's not the criminals that Trump campaigned on arresting, right? So if somebody who works in a factory that is fueling our economy and otherwise living and abiding by all of our laws has a traffic violation, like I'm sure everyone watching has had at least one in their lifetime, they should go to criminal jail, not immigration civil court, for the actual offense, which is coming to the country or overstaying a visa, which is not legal in our country. That's what they should be in criminal court for.
If you're here in the country illegally, I'm sorry, you have to really, really try to follow the letter of the law involving all other laws to protect yourself, because if you get
stopped for a tail light
and they find out you're here illegally, then they're going to take some immigration action against you.
Fine,
what do you want me to say? You're here illegally.
That's fine, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about they stop you and then they find out you're here illegally.
Do I think they should?
I'm talking about they're randomly raiding places, finding people, finding out their names.
The only problem is they have traffic violations. No, of course not.
That's what's happening, though. That's what's happening. If 60%, I said 14% of people have actually been convicted of or are currently in the process of being accused of criminal convictions that the president talks about.
By the way, some of these traffic violations are a little bit more serious than just
we discussed them before. Over. Yes, we discussed them.
I mean, there are this has made big news in conservative media. The couple truck drivers who are illegal immigrants who got licenses to operate trucks and are driving like it's the third world and have caused car crashes that have killed Americans.
And because
it's pretty outrageous for a lot of people.
I think it's important to note that because you have one example of something doesn't mean that it's the overwhelming, two examples doesn't mean that it's the overwhelming thing that's happening. You pointed that out in the Savannah Guthrie story we just talked about. We have one example of potential kidnapping, but that's not how these kidnapping cases usually work, right? But because the spotlight's on it, we believe that we should be extra fearful about the way that immigrants drive. That's wholly not true.
Right.
So I don't think that we should try to act like there's a bunch of...
But the conservative... Right. I'm not exaggerating, but the conservative perspective is there shouldn't even be one or two of these instances because they're all illegal immigrants and they want them all gone. So it's not about proportionality or statistics or how likely it is. It's any infractions by illegal immigrants shouldn't be taking place at all. We should deal with zero.
But we hear the president and the administration,
This is
specifically the president.
not my perspective.
Fine. And I know your perspective, but we hear the president often saying that there are rapists, gang members, and all these people that he's arresting. That's only 14%. So I want you to address the fact that most people that he's arresting and taking out of this country are not.
Okay, a lot of Americans will say 14% fewer rapists and gang members.
400,000 people, and then 300. So whatever 14% of 393,000 that have been taken out.
We have to deport some other illegal immigrants who haven't. So we end up collecting them in our process of getting the 14% who are rapists and gang members. We also ensnare a significant number of illegals who have not committed other crimes.
We also killed 2 Americans in the process.
That was worth it. That's what many.
And we also killed 2 Americans
say.
in the process with our tactics in Minnesota. So that's also that all part of the worth it?
Democrats resist local law enforcement cooperating with the federal authorities.
No, it's not about he said, she said. It actually was
illegal
incidents where we're talking about
whatsoever.
the extreme use of force by law enforcement. We're currently investigating that right now, whether that was the case or they were out of bounds with their actions. So therefore, that's the dialogue.
Them saying they'll do no immigration enforcement whatsoever in Minnesota.
So Democratic leaders, like Fry did not tell Renee Good exactly how to behave. Republican leaders did not tell ICE exactly how to behave. Right is right and wrong is wrong. Using too much force on an American citizen should be looked at independently and fairly by both sides and saying we don't want Americans to die.
Driving into a police officer is going to result in them taking lethal force.
Do you have another excuse for Alex Preddy, or are you going to say he was driving as well?
No, I have not taken the position that was a rightful shooting. I don't know.
You haven't taken the position that either one were rightful, but I think we should look into that and say this is not the outcome of immigration.
I agree, but it is not, in fact, the outcome in cities and states where the local authorities are working with national authorities to detain and deport illegal immigrants.
I think that we can do better around the rhetoric that's happening with migrants in this country. I think that you could point fingers about whether calling people rapists is effective when the numbers don't show that. I think we could do better with communication before enforcement. So the fact that the president is now speaking to Walz and putting in Tom Homan to be the level-headed manager of the situation after the fact, after 2 Americans is killed, is too little too late. I think this all could have been handled ahead of time.
Now that they can cooperate.
He started with pointing fingers.
I've had enough of this too. We've all had enough of innocent people getting killed. So I hope Democrats got the message and are going to help out. So now we'll have less of these violent confrontations.
I can't believe that you seriously would put all the blame on that people died on Democrats saying they don't want the way immigration is handled by
states
the
where
president.
They're working together, and because when they work together, you can arrest or detain an illegal immigrant at the courthouse where there's no danger, where they've already gone through a metal detector, so they don't have weapons. So then that's safer for everyone. There's no way for them to flee. That's what we want to happen. You want the stops to occur in safe environments like a courthouse, for instance. That's what can happen in red states all over the country. It's not what happens in Minnesota because they're not going to do it.
Yeah, there are a lot of laws in this country that have been changed and discussed over time between local leaders and federal officials. And the president should have started with a conversation with leaders that didn't agree with his sweeping plan for the nation.
All right, Lindsey, I think I already know, but tell me what's in your lens today.
Sigh. So here's what's actually happening. A sitting member of Congress, Tennessee Representative Andy Ogles, has called for an investigation now into Bad Bunny's halftime show, suggesting it amounted to broadcasting, quote, gay pornography during primetime. That is not satire. I really wish it was, but no, that's an official letter to the House Energy and Commerce Committee. Meanwhile, the government is flirting with shutdown drama, immigration policy is in chaos, and Congress is struggling to pass basic functional legislation. But sure, let's launch a federal inquiry into Bad Bunny's halftime show. Republican Representative Mark Alford added this to the chat.
Over to the Bad Bunny, bad performance of the Super Bowl halftime. We are still investigating this. There's a lot of information that has come out about the lyrics. I saw the halftime show and was switching back and forth with the TPUSA halftime show.
See, that's the problem. I thought folks like you weren't interested in watching this show. But there you go. You were switching back and forth to watch this and Kid Rock? Or were you just watching Bad Bunny altogether? Oh, you were watching Bad Bunny closely, intently, taking notes, the wrong ones. This is giving obsessed. Let's walk through the facts. The Grammy Award-winning Puerto Rican artist did not perform pornography, gay or otherwise. What he delivered was a widely praised celebration of Latin American culture, Puerto Rican pride, and unity. He opened with the statement, "God bless America," then sang primarily in Spanish, listing countries across the Americas. Behind him, a screen read, quote, "The only thing more powerful than hate is love." That's what sparked federal outrage. Before he even hit the stage, conservative figures were primed for war. Homeland Security head Kristi Noem promised ICE would, quote, "be all over the Super Bowl." President Donald Trump called the selection, quote, "absolutely ridiculous." After the show, the president wrote that it was, quote, "an affront to the greatness of America," and that, quote, "nobody understands a word this guy is saying." We saw him watching also. For the 100th time, Puerto Ricans are American citizens. Spanish is spoken by over 40 million people in the United States, and America, by definition, includes more than one language, more than one culture, more than one rhythm. The performance was politicized by y'all the moment it was announced, labeled un-American by people like whatever her name is from Fox News, criticized for being in English, for not being in English, framed as indecent without any evidence. That tells us more about the critics than the content. This wasn't about obscenity. It wasn't about federal law. It was about cultural discomfort and the need to turn that discomfort into a culture war headline. If a joyful celebration of Puerto Rican identity made you feel less American, that's not a halftime problem. That's your insecurity problem. And when members of Congress are spending their time investigating choreography while the country is facing real policy challenges, that is not leadership. That's obsession. It's time to get a life and get back to work, please. Real work.
Well,
don't tell me this investigation has any merit or is valid in any way. So just start somewhere else. Pick any point.
What I was
that.
going to say is that there's not really going to be any investigation. So you can rest assured, you can be set at ease. There's no actual effort to investigate this. This is just some point scoring for some red meat for the base. There's nothing to investigate. It's not real.
It doesn't annoy you that red meat would be calling a performance that called for unity gay pornography? I mean, it's a little more than red meat. It's like weird and obsessive and like, what are you talking about? What I don't get the reference. That doesn't like strike you as odd that that's what Congress members are going on television as the government might shut down in 2 days talking about? Mm-hmm. No?
Yeah, how should I say this? There was not a lot of gay pornography in the
There was none.
show.
There was none.
There was those two guys dancing.
No, that's not. But that's not pornography. They're talking about a violent.
Well, funny enough, that was not right because they were clothed. Just the ladies dancing was a little.
Again, not pornography. Doesn't violate
age
FCC
appropriate
rules. Does not violate FCC rules. So yeah.
If I had very young kids, I don't know that I'd want them watching.
Again, doesn't violate FCC rules. These people are going on television. These people are writing full statements and going on TV talking about gay pornography. Address the statements being made out of these people's mouths. Oh. Address the obsession with Bad Bunny. People who supposedly were going to watch the Kid Rock show. One of those 20 million. But no, they had the other TV on too, watching the most high-rated Super Bowl halftime show of all time.
Usually right-wing people who are ranting about gay pornography end up knowing more about it than the rest of us. So probably that's often a tell in the past. But there's nothing. Look, we can move on. There's nothing to investigate.
We're not going to talk about this tomorrow. We won't.
We are.
But I just want to say, I think that this is, I thought Megyn Kelly was
okay,
too
but
far.
you don't have to like the performance. You're not required to have liked it. If it wasn't your thing, it's not your thing.
That's fine. Any criticism of people who said they didn't like it, that's fine. Turn the TV off.
You've been ready to bite my head off all week over this.
I didn't say you don't have to like it. Well, I criticized when we went back and forth,
Robbie,
and you said,
like this or I'll hurt you. No. And I felt threatened. I was like, don't hurt me.
That's
fine.
Exactly. I'm so scary.
I was cowering in my.
Listen, you don't have to like the performance. You said you liked Lady Gaga's part. I accept that. What I don't like is the criticism.
It was unfamiliar to me. I liked the performance fine. It was just unfamiliar.
Right, and you can appreciate the production value. You can turn off the TV.
I liked all the little
Kid Rock's trash performance. You could have done whatever you like, but people chose to stay just to be critical and spend all their time doing that. And now people are threatening to pass some weird legislation about Bad Bunny's performance when the government is about to shut down. It just seems like a huge waste of time. Megyn Kelly's up in uproar.
Well, it's not a waste of time because nothing's going to happen.
Well, I think
Maybe it was a waste of oxygen to express
but
it on television.
the upheaval over it all, to me, tells more about the people who are screaming and hollering rather than the actual man who's just enjoying his day.
Well, they're mad, and you're mad about the Kid Rock one, so everybody's mad.
I wasn't mad about the Kid Rock one. I said it was an L.
You seem mad.
No, seem mad is a microaggression for a black woman that just talks with her hands.
Sorry.
So that's not a good thing to say. That's not a good thing to say. I'm not mad at all. I'm passionate. I'm passionate about the idea.
I'll gaslight you.
I'm passionate about the idea.
What are you talking about?
I'm passionate about the idea that Megyn Kelly seems to think that people speaking Spanish offends her and is un-American. That's what I was passionate about. The fact that she had the nerve and the gall to go on her platform and say, and say Latinos in the way that she did. People in the Latin community were like, what's wrong with you? That's like, you're teetering the line of like deeply offensive. Like, you're not part of the community to use this weird fake accent. Like, it's racist. So that's what, racism will always get me riled up. But at the end of the day, the funniest part is that people are really so upset about Bad Bunny performing, and even he's done with it. He made one of the biggest performances of his life on the biggest stage. He's happy. He's on tour coming up. And you guys are like so upset about this.
You guys?
Yeah, like everybody in this ethos are like so mad.
I don't care.
Megyn Kelly was doing all this with her hands. I wasn't even doing all that. She's riled up. Kid Rock was literally like doing all this on TV.
You're right,
like,
you're perfectly calm. It's just Megyn Kelly.
I talk loud. I could be laughing and I talk loud. I have no inside voice. If I'm trying to tell a secret, that's why I don't really tell secrets. You'll know I'm talking about you. Mm-hmm. That's just the volume at which I speak. I'm from New York, classically. Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying that's just what it is. Megyn Kelly can't be racist and expect me to be calm about it. But also, everybody's big mad about the fact that Turning Point's whatever it was that a conference? Was that a concert? No. Performance was an L. You count it as a win. You guys are finding the win, moving the goalposts. Bad Bunny's numbers were a win. Numbers don't lie. That's all I can say.
If you disagree or want a different perspective on this, you can go back and watch my radar from earlier. We are now done with this, and we are
putting it to bed.
Lindsey, what's in your lens today?
Let's talk about it. It's not Bad Bunny, so I'm relieving you from that.
Proceed.
A federal grand jury this week refused to indict 6 congressional Democrats over a video where they told service members to reject illegal orders. You remember that? Now, this is a big deal, not just politically, but also legally. Sources familiar with the case tell Axios that the Justice Department sought to charge the lawmakers under a statute that carries up to 10 years in prison for anyone who, quotes, advises, counsels, or urges insubordination in the military. In the 90-second video, you'll remember, posted in November, the 6 congressional leaders reminded members of the military and intelligence community that, quote, no one has to carry out orders that violate the law or our Constitution. They did not reference a specific directive. After the video was posted, the president called their comments, quote, seditious, and demanded they be, quote, arrested and put on trial. But now a grand jury has declined to indict. That outcome fits a broader pattern. Trump's Retribution campaign is hitting a losing streak. Federal grand juries almost always return indictments. In 2013, they rejected them just 5 times out of the more than 165,000 cases nationwide, according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics. Prosecutors need only 12 of 23 jurors to agree. The bar is not especially high. And yet, in several high-profile cases involving the president's perceived political adversaries, that bar has not been cleared, or the cases have just fallen apart in court. For example, charges against former FBI Director James Comey were partially rejected by a grand jury and ultimately dropped after a federal judge ruled that the appointment of handpicked prosecutor Lindsey Halligan was invalid. In a separate case against New York Attorney General Letitia James, the judge wrote that, quote, all actions flowing from Halligan's, quote, defective appointment are, quote, unlawful exercises of executive power and must be set aside. A grand jury also later declined to indict James a second time. Now, even outside the political arena, juries have pushed back. In November, a former DOJ employee accused of throwing that, quote, Subway-style sandwich at a federal agent was found not guilty. That's after Pam Bondi pushed to charge him with a felony. It's important to be clear. A grand jury's refusal to indict is not a declaration of innocence. It simply means prosecutors did not present enough evidence to establish probable cause. But when grand juries, which historically approve the overwhelming majority of federal charges, repeatedly decline to move forward in politically charged cases, that should signal something, for the administration at least. The justice system is designed to be slow, procedural, and insulated from political pressure. Threats and social media posts don't substitute for statutory elements or evidentiary standards. Intent has to be proven. Appointments have to be lawful. Charges must survive judicial scrutiny. So while rhetoric may escalate, the courts and juries so far are drawing lines. Maybe it's time for the administration to take note and set their sights on something other than locking up its perceived political enemies.
Yeah, I mean, if grand jury doesn't indict, that's an indictment of the prosecutors, because grand juries didn't indict everyone and everything for any reason. So, yeah, they got to take the L on that. I'm with you there. I don't have much to say and push back in terms here.
I think it's
I told you I
interesting.
was less cranky this morning.
Oh, it was the crankiness earlier this week. No, I think that is interesting because a lot of the criticism, and I've also been on board with this criticism of continuing to try to prosecute, whether it was politically or actually in courts, civilly or actually criminal charges. President Trump was overbearing, and that it would just rile people up, and it was not going to get the Democrats to the goal that they were trying to get at. And so to see the same people, or President Trump specifically, go on this crusade where he's made it his business and made his whole entire life to retaliate is not the exact behavior you want to see from somebody who said, I became a victim of the system. I mean, that was his entire political campaign speech to get reelected. So to get in office and continue to do that seems kind of silly when you know that backfired completely with you.
I mean, it's a bit much to expect
him to go high like Michelle Obama and not go low into the ground, the depths.
Obama's ever went high, but yes, it's a bit naive to expect. We tried to keep Donald Trump off the ballot. We took legal actions. You know, we being the
I believe it was in Colorado.
General of Colorado.
Yes, in my state. I believe that it was my state.
The Democrats took action to make it impossible that you could even check Donald Trump's name on the ballot. No retaliation.
I criticized that, by the way.
No, I know, but that was it's kind of like don't, if you come at the king, you better not miss.
The king. Kind of we had no king's protest. Remember, we don't want a king. President Trump is not king.
People.
No, the no king's protest.
It's all old people. It's all boomers. I don't care.
I didn't particularly like the no king's protest, but
I want to know boomers protest.
I wanted to circle back to the topic of that. I didn't like the no king's protest, but you just said if we come at the king, we should expect an entire presidency. I know, but we should expect an entire presidency full of retaliation. How is this effective? And I know what you're about to say as soon as I bring this up, but there are like so many things on the docket. You have to say that the pettiness can at least go away, because sometimes I argue we're so focused on foreign affairs. We need to focus on the economy, what's going on here. Can we take off petty? Like you say we can do two things at once. Do we have to do three things at once? The pettiness has to be focused on. Like going after Letitia James to see if her hairdresser has some issues, to try to connect her to her hairdresser. How close are you with your barber?
Quite close.
You are. So if he's
job.
implicated in any crime, you should be looked at too.
Well, if I let her, stay in some house I had rented.
No, that's not the same case. That one got dropped.
Right, I don't know.
And now there's another case with the hair
barber thing.
No, she has a hairdresser, and the hairdresser, they're looking into her and in some ways that money was spent and some illegal action she might have took, but now saying that Letitia James has something to do with her hairdresser. Like, what is that? No, you can't connect that dot. So
if you say so.
No, that's what's happening. So I just want to know, like, when does it stop for you? When are you going to be like, President Trump, focus on something else? This is not working out, especially if you're not getting the results that you're looking for in any of these cases. Don't you think you should be like, it's time to...
It depends on the case. I think some of these people, some of these deep state creatures should continue to receive the same scrutiny they gave to Trump. Withholding, that includes John Bolton, Comey, those seem legitimate grounds for inquiry to me. No?
I just think if you want to spend your presidency doing the same thing that you criticize Biden for spending his presidency doing to you, you're going to get the same result, which will be, if President Trump would like that, a Democrat in office in 2028. So he just kind of helping.
And I expect them to go real hard against Trump.
And I hate to see that. I hate to see this back and forth.
I don't expect.
I hope that they're
stand
done
down.
with Trump.
No
the
one's
Trump
standing
conversation.
down. It's not going to happen.
Why? That's why. Like we
Nobody's
should.
going to
We
be
should.
the bigger person.
Political leaders are not ordained into office, right? Like they are voted in. The voters in American public should require that people be more adult-like and move on from this political retribution campaign on both sides of the aisle. That should
We are
be
not
a requirement
as
for
voters.
our
We
vote.
are not punishing our elected representatives for this. So I guess we don't care enough, and thus they're going to get away with it.
But then we complain and give Congress like a 10% approval
Maybe
rating
democracy is
out of
just a bad
100.
system, Lindsay. Maybe it shows that we should not be that picking our own leaders, and we don't toss out the bad people. We reelect most of these people anyway. It's not become competitive.
So what say you? What's the way forward then?
What about a king? Maybe we should have a king. Constitutional monarchy. I'd give it a spin.
I actually don't want a king, and I don't want.
Limited by constitutional, very powerful court still. I think we could try that one out.
Like it will be like the UK. We can
No,
have,
they
like,
don't have a powerful king.
I know they have like a just
They have a
a
figurehead
representative.
king.
Yeah.
No. That's not. That would just be a. They have a royalty. Yeah. No. I'm talking about an actual king.
No, thank you. I'm going to pass on that one.
All right. Fair enough.
Lindsay, what's in your lens?
Let's get to it. So the Trump administration says it's ending Operation Metro Surge in Minnesota after 2 months of aggressive immigration enforcement that has sparked protests and tragically left 2 U.S. citizens, Renee Good and Alex Preddy, dead. Now, border czar Tom Homan made the announcement yesterday.
I have proposed, and President Trump has concurred, that this surge operation conclude. A significant drawdown has already been underway this week and will continue through the next week.
Homan says the surge is ending because cooperation between federal, state, and local law enforcement has improved, meaning more immigration detentions will now happen inside jails rather than through street operations. He also says local agencies are responding more quickly and consistently to protests. Governor Tim Walz acknowledged the fear won't disappear overnight, writing on X, quote, "The long road to recovery starts now. The impact on our economy, our schools, and people's lives won't be reversed overnight. That work starts today." At a press conference, Walz emphasized that Minnesota has always supported targeted enforcement and that nothing fundamentally changed the state's approach. And that's where things get a little complicated. So for months, the Trump administration has framed this crackdown as a mission to deport the worst of the worst. But according to an internal Department of Homeland Security document obtained by CBS News, ICE made roughly 393,000 arrests across the country between last year and this year. Yet less than 14% of those arrested had charges or convictions for violent crimes like homicide, robbery, sexual assault, kidnapping, or arson. At the same time, ICE official Marcos Charles suggested detainers sent to the state's jails and prison weren't being honored. But then he later acknowledged that the Minnesota Department of Corrections had fully cooperated. DHS has said there are about 1,360 people with ICE detainers in Minnesota prisons and jails. The Minnesota Department of Corrections says that number is closer to 300. Minnesota Department of Corrections Commissioner Paul Schnell pushed back forcefully, saying that ICE officials, quote, "continue to publicly repeat information that is inaccurate and misleading. This is no longer a simple misunderstanding." Now, since December 1st, the state has turned over 14 people with ICE detainers after they completed their sentences, according to CNN. It's important to note before an inmate can be turned over to ICE, they must complete their prison sentence. So here's my question. If Minnesota was honoring these detainers, if the dispute was about data and communication, why did it take a massive federal surge, widespread fear, and 2 American lives lost to reach this middle ground? Republicans argue sanctuary policies tie the hands of law enforcement. Democrats argue the sweeps were overly aggressive and lacked accountability. Both sides have their talking points, but governance isn't supposed to be about proving a point. It's supposed to be about problem solving. Politics is hard, immigration is hard. But when cooperation was possible all along, and when the facts were this murky, escalation was not inevitable. It was a choice, and the cost of that choice is something Minnesota is now left to live with.
All right, so Let's get into this. I think a lot of people on the MAGA side are viewing this as a capitulation that the Trump administration has allowed the protest and the government officials in Minnesota to basically dictate their immigration policy. But after looking at some reporting from independent journalist Julio Rosas, I actually don't think that's the case. What's most important, I think, to point out here is that they are not ending all enforcement operations in Minnesota, just the surge posture. So those extra individuals that were sent in to create this ability to respond to protests, to be able to have enforcement operations out in the community, that's what's ending, because now they're satisfied that the local officials are going to cooperate with the detainer requests, not just at prisons and people who are serving sentences, but also at the jails, which are run by the local law enforcement agencies, as opposed to the Department of Corrections. So basically what they did, according to this report from Julio Rosas, is they exercised with this logic that if the local officials weren't going to cooperate, then they were going to send in a mass amount of federal law enforcement officials, and then they would have two choices. They could either watch their city have an effective government takeover from the feds, or they could choose to go ahead and cooperate and allow these tensions to fall. They chose the latter.
Yeah, I think when people are looking at this, Tom Homan, who's the person that I'm mostly taking the information from because he did the press conference, he was kind of vague in saying conversations basically are happening between local law enforcement and federal officials that maybe weren't happening, that we didn't see. And I'll be the first one to say that Mayor Fry is very vocal, still condemning this whole thing. And I don't think that that is pushing us any way forward. I do think Tom Homan coming into the city did help de-escalate. But when I look at the fact that Minnesota and local officials have been, for at least since we know December 1st, according to the commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Corrections, Paul Schnell, have been cooperating and telling, ICE, listen, we said our policy remains largely the same from before you guys even sent the first group of ICE agents into our city. I don't really understand if nothing is really changing about the jail and prison portion, because I think that's where we agreed last week.
Well, jails and prisons are operated by different individuals. So the Department of Corrections operates the prisons. The jails are where criminals are held, or alleged criminals are held, basically when they're being charged, right? So that's done by local law enforcement,
right?
Not the Department of Corrections.
So the state's largest jail operator, the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, they released a statement and they said our policies remain unchanged. They said, quote, "We have not made any changes to the policies that guide our enforcement with ICE." So they're basically doubling down on what they were already doing. So what I'm saying is that the Department of Corrections is staying the same and cooperating. The head of the state's largest jail operator is saying we're not doing anything different. And so Tom Homan essentially is in the same battle with the jails and in the same partnership with the corrections department. So what can we go off of?
I don't think the sheriff's office is being honest there, to be totally frank with you. But what Homan also said in his press conference yesterday was that they absolutely reserve the right to go back to surge enforcement if the local officials do not adhere to the promises that they apparently made to the administration behind the scene. They also had a lot of success while they were there. 4,000 arrests of illegal aliens, as well as 3,300 missing children found out of that 300,000 group that were lost during the Biden administration. So the metrics make very clear that they were doing what they promised that they would do when Trump was still campaigning for office.
Well, I hope that, like you said, the surge doesn't go back and start all over again after Tom Homan came in and tried to be, the reserved entity in this whole thing, and a problem that largely started from pointing fingers that could have been handled, I think, beforehand. When we look at this back, from our perspective now, seeing historically what just happened over the last few months, I do think a lot of it could have been avoided with some of the conversations that are just happening now, unfortunately. And I'm not afraid to point to people like Mayor Fry and our president and say, can everybody tone it down and have conversations way earlier and stop pointing fingers?
Yeah, we also have to remember, of course, that this was all started because of the massive fraud investigation in Minnesota, and that was why this surge happened initially, was because the local officials had not been doing enough to prevent that from happening and had allowed some illegal aliens to engage in that fraud as well. So Tom Homan also promised that there will be hundreds of special agents remaining in Minnesota to make sure that that fraud is still cracked down on.
Yeah, and they're going to definitely stay on top of that because that was the biggest issue probably in the last few months.